Who of you have been to Cuba? Well, I see most of you are going to learn something new today. This speech is not about delicious food. Neither is it about beautiful nature. This speech about the people and their life in Cuba. People there are very cheerful, warm, and easygoing. I also felt that Cubanos are very hospitable and always willing to help. So many people helped us in our journey. Once, the whole bus was helping us to find the right stop. And then one guy was walking with us for an hour to find our host. Today, I want to share with you 3 most striking things about Cuba for me. And I hope they will remind you how lucky you are to be here in Stockholm. The very first thing we learn about Cuba is that they have 2 currencies, CUC and CUP. Yes, they sound very similar. CUC worth around €1 and is used mostly by foreigners, while CUP worth 25 times less than euro and used mostly by locals. As a foreigner, you can buy both currencies, but most of the prices for you would be in CUC, while for locals, they would be in CUP. So the life in Cuba is much cheaper for locals than it is for tourists. But the quality of life is also very different. Tourists would be living in huge luxurious villas, while locals would be sometimes in a house which hardly holds together. Tourists would be driving modern cars, while locals would be driving cars made in USSR, which are at least 30 years old. Tourists would be eating delicious and sophisticated food, while locals would be mostly eating cheap and unnutritious burgers. So there are 2 worlds, the world of rich and the world of poor, existing in the same country at the same time. And the other aspect of those 2 currencies is that they sound very similar, CUP and CUC, and both can be called pesos cubanos, which leads to endless confusions. It happened to us so many times that we will be talking about pesos cubanos, meaning CUP, while local seller or taxi driver will be thinking about CUC, and that's 25 times difference. For example, in our last day, we took a bike taxi for 1 kilometer and offered 6 pesos cubanos, meaning 6 CUP, which is the price for 6 cups of coffee for a local. When we arrived, it appeared that the taxi driver was thinking about 6 CUC, which makes it €6 for 1 kilometer on a bike taxi in Cuba, which is ridiculous. And we had to negotiate, and it was quite stressful. Another aspect of having 2 currencies and 2 worlds is in their public transportation system. As you can guess, there are 2 bus companies, one for tourists and one for locals. The company which is for foreigners is quite expensive, but easily accessible. The one for locals would be crazy cheap, but the buses are so rare that you have to book them 10 days in advance, which is a big challenge for spontaneous Cubanos, so they don't really use their own buses. And very few people have their own car. In fact, we've seen more people riding horses than cars. So people mostly go on the road to hitchhike as their main mean of transportation. And to make it easier, government makes it compulsory for the drivers to pick up hitchhikers if they go the same way. The passengers will of course pay a little fee, but the driver has to pick up hitchhiking. That's a part of communist ideology. Everybody should take care about others. There are official hitchhiking spots called puntos amarillos. Amarillo means yellow in Spanish, where government officials in yellow uniform, amarillos, are doing hitchhiking for people. And people come there like on a bus stop and stay in the line, and Amarillo would be guiding them in a car one by one. It was quite unusual to have a government official doing hitchhiking for us. The third aspect, which is quite different in Cuba from Europe, is in the ratio between salary and prices. Most of the people we met were working for governments. And the salary government pays are extremely small, around 15–20 euro per month, while prices are not that small. They don't have many industries in Cuba, so they don't produce much. And import is very challenging because of the embargo from the United States. So most of the products are very scarce. If you want to go to the supermarket, you need to stay in the queue in order to enter. And when you finally enter, it's like Kinder Surprise. You never know what you're going to find. And because products are so rare, they're also quite expensive. For example, a TV would cost at least 400 euro, which is a salary of 2 years of work in Cuba. Which means that their salary is definitely not enough for a decent living. And people actually need to have a second job in their free time in order to make the end meet. Mostly in tourist sector, as a taxi driver, bed and breakfast, or selling fruits. For example, if a doctor would have a car, he would most probably work as a taxi driver at night. That makes me sad, but that's how it is. I hope you've noticed that 3 curiosities I share with you today share the same message. Life in Cuba is hard. And let me remind you then. There are 2 currencies creating 2 worlds. Hitchhiking is a mainstream, but not an exception. And having 2 jobs is a necessity. What do people of Cuba need to do to get a better life? I don't know. What I know is that we are lucky to have what we have. And that sometimes we need to travel to appreciate how amazing our life is. So if you think that your life is full of issues, I highly encourage you to travel around the world and see how most of the people live.